Sing me a song of a lass that is gone. Say, could that lass be I? Mary of soul, she sailed on a day over the sea to Skye. Mull was astern, rum on the port, pig on the starboard bow. Glory of youth glowed in her soul. Where is that glory now? Sing me a song of a lass that is gone. Say, could that lass be I? Mary of soul, she sailed on a day over the sea to Skye.
Welcome to Outlander Filming Locations Part 2. If you're new to the channel, welcome, and if you're a subscriber, I'm glad to have you back. If you haven't watched the Outlander Filming Locations video Part 1, don't worry, these don't need to be watched in any particular order. This includes all the locations we missed the first time. If you haven't watched the first one, you're welcome to click the info button at the top of the screen and head over to that video. Alright, let's get this tour underway. Our first stop is Tweeddale Court. This is located along the Royal Mile in Edinburgh. My daughter and her cousin are going to lead the way as they take us down one of the streets that was set up as 18th century Edinburgh. This location was first used in Season 3, Episode 6, in the episode called A. Malcolm. This is just one of several locations shot in Edinburgh. The filming locations in Edinburgh are very easy to access as they're located off the Royal Mile, which is one of the most touristy locations in all of Edinburgh. Now let's see this location come to life in the actual Outlander show. In this scene, Claire had just returned back to 18th century Scotland and saw Fergus for the first time. The set decorators do an amazing job transforming these areas into the 18th century. Granted, Edinburgh already looks like it's part of the past. So let's take a look at where Jamie and Claire are actually going in modern times. Amongst a century-old architecture, you can see a little bit more modern apartments to the upper left. Next is Bakehouse Close. It's one of several closes you'll find along the Royal Mile. Closes are essentially alleyways, and centuries ago these probably would have been gated. As we move through the alleyway, the A. Malcolm print shop stairs should come into view. Looks like we got a few Outlander fans there already. It may look a little bare right now, but let's take a look how the set decorators changed it. One thing that's really struck me during the filming of this was all of the CGI that was used, as you can see in the background here. Bakehouse Close actually represents Carfax Close in Outlander. Several Outlander scenes were filmed in Bakehouse Close. Directly across from the A. Malcolm print shop is the doorway that leads to the courtyard of the brothel. Next, you'll see Jamie exit the brothel and walk right through these double doors. If you're lucky enough, the double doors will be unlocked and you can actually go into the courtyard. Unfortunately, that was not the case for us. You'll notice that Jamie walks past a second set of stairs, which is directly behind the A. Malcolm print shop. You can see those stairs right here behind those A. Malcolm print shop stairs. Since we're here, let's approach the stairs from a few different angles. So let's imagine what it would have been like for Jamie to go down those stairs and the view that he saw. As we exit through the tunnel of Bakehouse Close, it's going to bring us out to the Royal Mile. You're going to see some amazing architecture as we enter into the mile. The World's End pub is just around the corner, and it was featured in both the book as well as the series. The TV series, however, did not shoot here. They actually shot inside of a soundstage. Now off to one of my favorite locations on the Outlander Trail, the city of Culross. Culross just has under 400 residents and was believed to have been founded in the 6th century. It is only 43 minutes from downtown Edinburgh. Let's see if you fall in love with it as much as we did. For the TV series, this town was actually Cranesmuir. I think you'll agree that the side streets just made a perfect location for Outlander. This town was used for several scenes in Outlander through several seasons. Here's my wife and daughter walking down the same street that Claire just walked down. My wife and daughter are about to walk around the corner to the house of everybody's favorite character, Leary. As you're looking at the house, keep your eye on the beautiful scenery in the background, as we're going to show you what it really looks like. As I stated before, there's a lot more CGI in this show than what people realize. If I recall correctly, I think this house might have even been for sale when we were there. One of the most recognizable locations in Culross is the Mercat Cross. Claire and Dougal Mackenzie are heading directly over to Geillis Duncan's house. It is one of the larger houses on the street, as you can see here to the right. This town square was the site of many scenes in Outlander, and some of the most pivotal ones as well. While Claire and Geillis are actually looking out this window, the interior of Geillis' house was filmed inside Culross Palace. After this priest walks the boy over to Geillis Duncan's house and shoves him through the door, the scene takes over inside of a soundstage, and Culross Palace. All exterior shots, though, were filmed here in Culross. It appears they painted most of the White Houses either a gray or a dark blue, as you can see here. It'd be nice to see this shot without the garbage cans in the car. Jamie finally comes into the scene as they exit Geillis' house, and we'll swap that wagon for an Audi. In addition to the boy thief being filmed here in Culross, the scene of Claire and Geillis' witch trial exteriors were also shot here. You can see they're building the pyre to burn a few witches there. We'll cover the trial of Claire and Geillis a little bit later in the video. If you do come to Culross for a visit, it appears that there's a little cafe right outside the Mercat Cross. It just didn't happen to be open the day we were there. Culross Palace was used extensively in Outlander. Both the exteriors and interiors were used in filming. Unfortunately, during our trip, the interior was closed for visitors. This scene from Outlander shows it being a Jacobite encampment in Season 2. Notice a significant use of CGI in the background, as none of that existed in real life. Inside the palace, the High Hall was used for the Jacobite meeting where Jamie swears his oath to Prince Charlie. In this scene, you'll also see Claire pulling a tooth from a local woman. Murtaugh is waiting in the background for Jamie as he's meeting with Bonnie Prince Charlie. The palace's kitchen and pantry were even used as a tavern in one of the episodes. In Season 4, they used the interior of the palace for some of the rooms in Leary's home. While the exterior of Geillis' home was near Mercat Cross, the interior of her parlor was filmed inside the palace's withdrawing room. They used pretty much every part of this palace. You'll notice this staircase in the scene with Claire and a British soldier. You can see they've muted the color of the palace as the bright yellow is not as visible here. Since the palace was closed during our visit, we went up the staircase on the side of the palace to overlook the gardens. The gardens at Culross Palace represented the herb garden at Castle Laoghaire. If you recall, this is a scene where Claire picks herbs and talks to Geillis. Based on this scene and the way the garden looks now, you may think it's two very different places. I'm sure when spring hits fully, this garden will be much more overgrown than what you see here. Culross Palace and the gardens are now owned by the National Trust for Scotland. If you plan on visiting Culross while you're on the Outlander Trail, I highly recommend you spend about 1 to 2 hours, maybe more if you plan on having lunch here. One thing to know about many of the castles in Scotland, most of these places open on April 1st. So their season didn't exactly align with our trip in March. Callendar House was another highlight of our visit to Scotland. This location mainly used the kitchen for Outlander filming. It was the kitchen in the Duke of Sandringham's home, Belhurst Manor. It is in this kitchen where Mercat learns that Sandringham organized the attack in Paris. As you know, that attack resulted in the rape of Mary Hawkins. Other than replacing the table in the middle of the room, very little was done to the kitchen in order to decorate the set for this scene in Outlander. When you visit, the fireplace will be lit, all the candles in the sconces will be lit. It will be very true to the period. If you visit the castle, you'll be in good company. Many historical figures, including Mary Queen of Scots, Oliver Cromwell, Bonnie Prince Charlie, and Queen Victoria have all visited this castle. I tried to keep the scenes from Outlander PG, but this is where Mercat says, "I kept my word, I lay vengeance at your feet." Callendar House has a 600-year history. The main core of the building, however, is a 14th century tower house. Currently, the house is managed by the Falkirk Community Trust. Next up is Linlithgow Palace. It resides in the town of Linlithgow, which is about 15 miles west of Edinburgh. This palace was used to represent Wentworth Prison. The only exterior shots of the palace was here at the entrance. All the other exterior scenes were filmed at Bamburgh Castle, which you'll see later in the video. Many of the interior scenes of Wentworth Prison were filmed inside this palace. I do need to mention that many of the palaces and castles in Scotland are currently undergoing renovation. It may be possible to access the grounds of some of these castles and palaces, but in this particular case, we were unable to go inside. If you need to remember what the importance of Wentworth Prison was, this is where Jamie is tortured and raped by Captain Blackjack Randall. Here's a close-up of the entrance you just saw with Claire and Mercat. The palace was once a royal residence of the Stuarts. It was also where Mary Queen of Scots was born. There has been a royal residence on this property since 1124. Normally, this is a castle that you could visit year-round, but as I mentioned earlier, due to the masonry work, it is currently closed on the interior. But as you can see, the grounds around it are absolutely beautiful, so I still think it is worth a visit even if you're just going to tour the grounds. While Linlithgow was used for most of the interior scenes of Wentworth Prison, Bamburgh Castle was used for all the exterior scenes. Bamburgh Castle is located about an hour and 23 minutes south of downtown Edinburgh. However, you are passing into England to get there. While the close-up to the interior of Wentworth Prison was Linlithgow, here is a distance shot, which was filmed at Bamburgh Castle. This is probably one of the most well-preserved castles I've ever been in. It's located on the northeast coast of England in the village of Bamburgh, which is in Northumberland. There has been a castle on this site since the early 1000s. Eventually, in 1894, the castle was bought by industrialist William Armstrong. He completed restoration of the castle, and it currently remains in the Armstrong family still. As you can see here, the interior is quite a bit different than Wentworth Prison of Outlander. Our next stop on the Outlander Trail is Dunure Castle. In Outlander, it represented Silkies Island. However, it's really not an island. In reality, it's on the west coast of Scotland in the village of Dunure. In addition to not being an island, they kind of flipped the view. So here's what it actually looks like from this perspective. No matter how you look at it, it's one of the most beautiful castle locations in Scotland. The site of this castle dates from the late 13th century. The ruins you see today are the remains of the building from the 15th and 16th century. The castle's been excavated and is safe for public use. It's located in Kennedy Park, which has a number of facilities for visitors. You'll immediately recognize this castle from when Jamie is on Silkies Island to find the treasure. As you can see, we found several of the same areas of the castle where Outlander was filmed. And we, like Jamie, searched the castle for the location where the treasure was found. Unfortunately, since Jamie already found the treasure, the only thing we found was a hole filled with a pigeon's nest, which you can see at the bottom right of your screen. Notice the distinctive marks of the stone. They exactly match the scene from Outlander where Jamie finds the treasure. Here Jamie notices the Mackenzie crest on this stone. If only we were so lucky to find the same thing. By 1694, this castle was completely ruined. Be that as it may, the ruins look stunning against the backdrop of the sea. It even has one of these little beehive huts, which was most likely used as pigeon housing. The views and land around the castle are breathtaking and second to none. The other Outlander filming location in Dunure is Dunure Harbour. This harbour was used in seasons 3 and 4. In season 4, what you see here is where Bree and Roger start their journey to the American colonies. While at the harbour, you'll pretty much have the place to yourself. There won't be that many visitors there. While there, I strongly recommend a stop at the Harbour View coffee shop, where we had some nice scones and coffee while we were walking around. While Bree and Roger both departed from here, they departed at different times. Outlander set designers also built a small fishing village on the side of the harbour. Currently, that area serves as a storage location for many of the boats that are typically in the harbour. The harbour was improved in 1811 to make the location a little bit more attractive for fishing. The water in the harbour is about 12 feet during ordinary spring tides. It's not quite deep enough to handle the largest of the fishing vessels, so currently the harbour hosts mainly small fishing vessels and recreational boating. This scene in the harbour shows Claire and Jamie prepping for their trip to Jamaica. This is the ship Artemis, which they took to Jamaica. You can also see the fishing village that was constructed just for the series. Prior to arriving in Dunure, we were in Edinburgh. Once we saw the harbour and the castle, we headed north to Glasgow. The thing we loved most about the Outlander Trail was discovering locations like this that we probably never would have seen otherwise. Our first destination in Glasgow was Pollok Country Park. Several scenes were filmed here, most of them being outdoor scenes. The house you see here was not actually used in Outlander. The park is a 368-acre county park. The park was originally part of the old Pollok estate, which was home to the Maxwell family for over 700 years. It was gifted to the Glasgow Corporation as long as it remained a public park. Here we see Jamie and young Fergus riding horses directly next to that waterfall and carriage house. The other scene shot here was Claire riding a carriage across the bridge in the park to stop Jamie from dueling Black Jack Randall. If you recall, she was pregnant during this particular event. The scene where Murtaugh holds up the wine shipment in the forest is also filmed here. The most recent season that was filmed here was season 4, where Roger and Bree attended the Carolina Scottish Festival. There are some that say that the herb garden near Castle Leoch was filmed here. However, I still believe that was Culross Palace. Nonetheless, I imagine that these gardens are absolutely beautiful in the spring. The house you see here can be rented for events and functions like weddings. There's also a very nice cafe on the premises as well. Now to the heart of Glasgow. Glasgow is the most populated city in all of Scotland. Not only did they film scenes from Outlander, scenes from the recent release of the movie The Batman were also filmed here. There's also a large department store here, which is coincidentally named Fraser's. While we were in Glasgow, they were actually filming the new Batgirl movie. It's easy to see why the Gothic architecture is perfect for Gotham City. Our first stop is 124 Downhill Street. This represented Fury Street in Boston, USA. This is where Claire and Frank and Brianna lived. Set designers made this attractive street to look like post-war America. It's very easy to find this location on a map, and you can use Google Maps to direct you directly to this location. In March, when we filmed this, the streets look quite a bit different without all the leaves on the trees. I should have gotten out of the car to take this video, but there was another car behind us honking at us to move along. Considering the wall-to-wall cars when we were there, I can't imagine the neighbors enjoyed having their cars removed for this footage. Next, we're off to Glasgow City Chambers. This is located on John Street next to George Square. This location was used in the episode called The Wedding, where Frank proposed to Claire outside the City of Westminster's Register office. While visiting there, just look for the door with the number 45 next to it. That is the exact spot where Frank proposed to Claire, as you'll see in this particular scene. On the other side of John Street where that was filmed is George Square, where you can see the opposite side of the Glasgow City Chambers. In Season 2 of Outlander, Claire volunteers to work at a hospital run by Mother Hildegard. The hospital interiors were filmed inside the Glasgow Cathedral crypts. Fortunately for us, we couldn't get any footage of the interior of the crypt. Bookings should be prearranged, and the next time that was available was way too late in the day for us. We had to get to our next destination, which was the Big House. As you all know, the Big House is Jamie and Claire's home in Fraser's Ridge in North Carolina. This set is used for all exterior shots of Fraser's Ridge and the Big House. Interior shots are filmed on a soundstage. While we did find this location on Google Maps, I wouldn't necessarily recommend going here. This place is locked down tighter than Fort Knox. They really don't want anybody disturbing this set. While we weren't able to get inside, I was able to get some decent photos from outside the fence. This shows you a little bit of the behind the scenes behind the Big House. The location really is as beautiful as it looks on screen. However, this is on private land and we didn't want to get arrested for trespassing. They also appear to have 24-hour security. It looks like it's all ready and set up for filming for Season 7. Also located nearby is the barn, which you can see here. While this house looks like it's in the middle of nowhere, there's some main roads directly next to it, so it's kind of surprising that it looks as beautiful as it does. I was able to get a little bit more footage of the barn than I was the house, because it was a little bit more in view. Even with all the outer gates protecting the site, they had gates around both of the house and the barn. Just outside the gates was the forest. I can't be 100% sure, but this looks like a forest that was used in other scenes that I've seen in Outlander. You be the judge and tell me what you think in the comments below. The river that runs in front of the Big House is absolutely gorgeous, and it continues down through the rest of the forest. The more I look at this image of the forest, the more I can see Jamie and Claire and young Ian walking through the forest here. I can't imagine that they didn't use this during the filming of Outlander. Here's a little view of a shed, I think, that was next to the Big House. Not far from the location of the Big House is Tom Christie's church. While we didn't make any attempts to actually try to go here, it is also on private land and very inaccessible. There is a right to roam law in Scotland, however they've got these things so fenced off that it's almost impossible to get to these locations. I also found this location on Google Maps satellite view, so it is visible, but as you can see there's not a lot of access. It also makes sense for filming to keep these locations fairly close together. Our next stop was Urquhart Castle. This is located just outside of Inverness. The castle sits like a postcard right on Loch Ness. This was not actually a filming location of the series, but it was featured in the novel as the place where Claire and Frank spent their honeymoon. It was just too beautiful not to include in this video, and it does have a place within the Outlander history. The castle has a storied history of turmoil and bloodshed. The final siege of the castle was during the Jacobite uprising from 1689 to 1690. When the government troops left in 1692, they blew up the gatehouse, leaving the castle impossible to defend. The castle was placed into state care in 1913, and since then it's now one of the most visited castles in all of Scotland. The Outlander Trail would not be complete without a visit to the Culloden Battlefield. The Culloden Visitor Center stands right next to the battlefield. The Battle of Culloden was not filmed here, but the scene where Claire visits the memorial was. On this land, on April 16, 1746, the Jacobite uprising came to a head. It was here where the Stuart Jacobite supporters gathered to fight against the Duke of Cumberland's troops. It was the last battle on British soil. In less than an hour, around 1,600 men were slain, 1,500 of them were Jacobites. The battle stands as a monument to a day in history that lasted only an hour and changed the life in the Highlands forever. Here we see Claire walking through the battlefield, standing among the stones that represent each of the clans that participated in the battle. Since the TV series Outlander started, one stone receives more visitors than any other, and that is the Clan Fraser stone. It is also the easiest to find as it's situated directly across from the Culloden Battlefield monument. These headstones mark the graves of where hundreds of clansmen gave their lives. The over 19-foot-tall memorial honors all of the fallen. As you walk around the battlefield, it is eerily silent. The battlefield is currently managed by the National Trust for Scotland. While I walked the Culloden moors, I couldn't believe how wet and boggy the area was. My understanding was that it was even wetter during the battle, as farmers in the modern century have drained off a lot of the water for their fields. Imagine trying to battle in these conditions. The blue flags at Culloden represent the Jacobite lines, and the red flags represent the British. Those were their starting points before battle. Onward to Clavacairns. While we know the standing stones featured in Outlander were fictitious, it is believed that Diana Gabaldon was inspired by the standing stones at Clavacairns. The Clavacairn is a circular tomb from the Bronze Age, almost 4,000 years old. There are 3 of these in this area. These were used as tombs where only 1 or 2 bodies appeared to have been buried in each. Standing stones encircle all of the tombs here at Clavacairns. Since Outlander began airing, busloads of tourists have been coming here. Of course, the standing stones are the most popular reason people are coming to this location. Tourists have been flocking here to get images of themselves touching the standing stones, as my wife did here. At Tibbermore Church, our next location, almost an entire episode was filmed inside of this location. In an episode called The Devil's Mark, it played the part of the court used in the witch trial of Claire and Geillis. Let's go inside and imagine what it looked like during the filming of this episode. Here we see Claire and Geillis being led into the courtroom, while the exterior scenes of the village of Cranesmuir were filmed in Culross. This scene was filmed over 60 miles away in this historic church. The wonderful thing about this church is that it remains almost virtually unchanged from the way it was filmed in the series Outlander. They did add a little wood behind Claire and Geillis, but other than that, it's pretty much the same. I'm sure there are hundreds, if not thousands, of people with this same shot in their photo albums. The Tibbermore Parish Church dates from 1632. Here comes Father Bain dramatically down the staircase to provide testimony that Claire is indeed a witch. In 1986, the church ceased being a parish church. It was passed into the care of the Tibbermore Charitable Trust. In 2001, it was acquired by the Scottish Redundant Churches Trust. Our last stop on the tour is Dysart Harbour. This port was dressed up to be the port of Laoghaire in France. Claire, Jamie, and Murtaugh arrive here at the start of Season 2. The harbour itself has a long history dating back to 1450. The high rock wall behind the harbour was dramatically replaced with CGI, as you can see here. Virtually none of what you see to the right even exists in real life. During the 1700s, there was a growing coal and salt trade to the Dutch and the Belgians. Today, this is still a lively port with fishermen as well as recreational boating as well. The historic building you see with the red roof in the back was changed dramatically with CGI, as you can see here. Most Outlander scenes at the harbour were filmed at the very back section of the harbour. The harbour is only about 43 minutes from Edinburgh. From here, you can see a similar view to what was used in Outlander for the burning of the ship that had typhoid fever. Dysart was another one of those places we never would have discovered if it wasn't for the Outlander Trail. If you're enjoying the tour, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. We would really like to thank you for joining us on this Outlander tour. If you still haven't seen Outlander Filming Locations Part 1, click on the video on the left-hand side. Click on the playlist to the right for other Scotland locations that are not Outlander related. Check back as I add more from our most recent trip. Thanks again for watching.